They say you can't hear a heart breaking, but I swear, that morning in Ikenga village, the wind itself paused to listen when mine did. It was the third Sunday of the Harmattan season, and while the sky burned soft with gold and dust, the courtyard outside our compound buzzed with fake laughter and pounding mortars. They had come to celebrate the naming of my sister's newborn child, a child the entire village believed was hers. My name is Adana, first daughter of Mama Nkichi, the late herbalist whom people both feared and secretly ran to when death whispered too close. I grew up in the shadows of my younger sister Amaka, who had skin like smooth palm oil and a voice that could beguile even thunder. Where I was quiet, she was charming. Where I was loyal, she was clever. But no one saw the venom that hid behind her smile. No one except me, and by the time they did, it was already too late. That morning, I stood by the edge of the compound, barefoot on the cool clay, watching women dance around her like bees drunk on flower scent. My eyes locked on the child she held, swaddled in fine Ankara cloth, his forehead marked with white chalk. My body trembled under my wrapper, not from the cold, but from the memory of pain. The kind of pain you don't speak about because even your own blood would call you cursed. A year ago, I had returned from the city, pregnant and abandoned. No one asked questions. They just assumed I had shamed the family, that some man had used me and left me like rotten yam. Mama was already on her dying mat, too weak to defend me, and Amaka, oh Amaka, welcomed me home with smiles and soup that burned bitter down my throat. She said she would help me, hide me, protect me. But what she did instead was wait until my labor screams echoed through the walls like thunderclaps, until my blood soaked the mat she laid beneath me. And then she took him. My son, my only son. When I woke, my body was empty and aching. And Amaka said, "You lost the child. The gods have taken him." I believed her. Half dead and broken, I believed her. But the truth never sleeps for long. And that morning, under the hot breath of celebration, I saw the curve of my boy's ears, the mark on his left shoulder, just like mine, just like Mama's. My milk never dried. My dreams never stopped. And as the drumbeat swallowed the ululations, I knew my sister took my baby, but God does not sleep forever. The villagers clapped, but their joy sounded distant, muffled like voices behind thick glass. I moved closer, each step scraping the inside of my heart raw. And Amaka saw me. She froze, for just a moment, and that moment was enough. Her smile cracked like clay in the sun, and though she turned quickly, whispering to the old women beside her, I knew that she knew, and she knew that I knew. The game had begun. In the days that followed the naming ceremony, I walked like a ghost beneath the mango trees and along the footpaths of Ikenga, haunted not just by the betrayal, but by the memories stitched deep inside my skin. Every coo from that child, my child, cut into me like sharpened cane. I would hear his tiny laugh from their compound as I fetched water at the stream, feel the tug of his cry as I swept the dust outside our hut, and each time something ancient and wild stirred inside me, a mother's ache, a lioness kept in chains. But I said nothing, not yet. I needed truth like a blade, not a rumor, and so I watched. I waited. Amaka paraded him like a prize goat at the festival, calling him Chisholm. God is with me. How ironic, I thought. She wrapped him in fine lace on Sundays, made sure he slept in our mother's old cradle, the same one carved by Papa before he disappeared into the Eastern War. The village women adored her, fed by her lies and softened by the powdered stories she smeared on their tongues. She's brave, they said, so fertile, so strong. I clenched my fists until my nails broke skin. I wasn't strong because I didn't cry. I was strong because I hadn't killed her. Yet, I remembered the night of my labor clearly now. The storm outside, how the windows trembled and goats wailed in fear. I had screamed for water, for help, for anyone. But it was only Amaka who came. She knelt beside me with a calmness that no sister should have had while her own blood bled to death. And when the pain drowned me, when the world went black, I remember her whispering in my ear, "Sleep, Adana. I'll take care of everything." I thought she meant she'd save me, but what she took was more than a child. She took my motherhood, my joy, my reason. Yet the gods were not blind. One morning, as I sat near Mama's shrine behind the compound, the old woman Nwaka limped toward me. She was the one who assisted Mama with herbs in the old days, the one people called the crocodile in a wrapper. Her face was a map of secrets, and her eyes knew things before they were spoken. "Adana," she said, voice thick like river water, "I was there the night you bled." My heart stopped. She sat beside me slowly, her joints cracking like firewood. "Your sister paid me not to speak, but silence has a weight, and mine has grown too heavy. I didn't speak, couldn't," she continued. "You gave birth, a full child, healthy, screamed like thunder. But she told the others you died. Then she told me you lost the baby, and she hid him well." My hands trembled as I pressed them to my chest. "Why, why now?" I asked. Her reply was simple. "Because the ancestors have started haunting my sleep." That night, I lit a candle before Mama's grave and cried into the dust, not just for what was taken from me, but for what I was about to become. I would not beg a maka. I would not scream. I would reclaim what was mine with the silence of a storm. So I returned to the stream the next day, where the women washed clothes and traded stories. I smiled more than usual. I laughed at things I didn't find funny. I became the shadow of Amaka's lies. Because to kill a snake, you must first let it uncoil. Days turned to weeks. I began bringing small gifts to the child: biscuits, bracelets, small gourds of milk. "You're so kind, Auntie," Amaka would say with that viper grin, not knowing each touch was a reclaiming. I began singing lullabies that only Mama knew. One day, as I sang near him, his small hand reached for my face and he whispered, "Mama?" Amaka's eyes darkened like a gathering storm, and I knew she heard. That night, I woke to find our compound gate open and the cradle empty. Panic flared like wildfire in my chest. I ran barefoot through the village, calling his name, my voice raw with fear. At the edge of the forest, I found her, Amaka, holding the child close, whispering spells I recognized from forbidden scrolls Mama once burned. "You're trying to bind him," I screamed. She turned, face pale, lips quivering. "He's mine now," she said. "He's all I have." "He was never yours," I said, stepping closer. "You stole him, lied, buried me in your lies." "You were weak," she hissed. "You would have ruined him with your sadness." Her words cracked something inside me, and for the first time I saw her not as my sister, but as a stranger who wore my scars like trophies. I lunged for the child, and she fought like a beast. Nails, teeth, curses. But the forest listened, the trees remembered, and with a force I didn't know I had, I knocked her back. She fell into the roots, screaming. The child clung to me, shaking but silent. I carried him home that night, blood in my hair, earth on my arms, but peace slowly returning to my soul. I didn't tell the village right away. I waited, let Amaka return empty-handed. Let them ask questions. Let truth bleed its way into their hearts. I went to Nwaka, asked her to bless the child, to undo whatever poison Amaka tried to plant. She did, chanting deep into the night until the stars trembled. And by dawn, he was whole. He looked at me with eyes that knew somehow that I was more than the woman who brought him gifts. I was the one whose heartbeat he first heard in the womb. And as the sun rose over Ikinga, I knew the battle had just begun. But this time, I was not afraid. By the next market day, whispers had begun to crawl through the village like ants after sugar. Adana is walking with the child again. But I thought she lost him. Wasn't that Amaka's son? The truth, once a quiet ember buried in my chest, had now caught wind. And like every fire born in silence, it rose fierce and uncontrollable. The women who once danced around Amaka's courtyard began turning their heads when she passed. Some stopped greeting her, others murmured as she walked by, their eyes sharp with suspicion. But Amaka, ever the performer, wore her pride like a head wrap, tight, bold, and deliberately loud. She began praying louder in church, donating more to the elders, and even claimed she had dreamed of her son being stolen by evil spirits. The irony nearly made me laugh. She painted herself as a mother fighting unseen battles, while I stayed in the shadows, quietly feeding and nurturing the very child she stole. I had learned the power of timing. Mama used to say, "Don't throw a spear while your enemy is still watching. Wait till they sleep, then aim straight for the soul." So I waited again until festival week. That was the time every villager, chiefs, elders, drummers, and even those who had long left Ikenga, returned to pay homage to the ancestors. The entire village would gather in the square, and stories, both sacred and scandalous, were known to find their voice on that day. I dressed in Mama's old wrapper, the deep red one with samspedy symbols woven near the hem, symbols of truth, justice, and the mother spirit. My son, yes, my son, wore white, just like newborns, during naming rites. His little hands clutched my fingers as we walked to the square. Amaka was already there, sitting beside the high priestess and the women of the council, her head held high, her lips parted in fake laughter. When she saw me approaching, her smile faltered. The crowd quieted, eyes shifting like wind-blown grass. I stood at the center of the square and raised my hand. "Ikenga people," I said, "for too long, truth has been buried beneath gold wrappers and powdered lies. But today, the ground demands truth." Murmurs stirred. The village chief tilted forward. I turned to the high priestess, old and regal with eyes like moonlight. "Will you test the blood?" I asked. She nodded slowly. In our village, when a claim was made over a child's true parentage and elders were divided, there was an ancient rite, the binding of wrists, the drinking of truth water. If the bond broke or the child rejected the wrong mother, it meant the gods had spoken. It was rare, it was feared, but it was final. The entire square held its breath as the ritual began. Amaka stepped forward, face pale now, eyes darting. "This is madness," she snapped. "She's jealous, bitter, cursed." I said nothing. The priestess brought out the clay bowl filled with water, touched by 7 sacred leaves, whispered over by 3 generations. She tied my left wrist to the child's right, then did the same for Amaka. The boy, confused but calm, looked at both of us. "Now," the priestess said, "drink." I drank first. The child sipped, then Amaka drank, and then he began to cry. Not a normal cry, a wail, deep, sharp. He twisted and pulled away from her, scratching, screaming, shrieking, "No!" until the entire square rose in alarm. The rope snapped. The priestess stepped back. "The gods have spoken," she declared. "The womb that bore this child is not the one who claimed him." Gasps, shouts. Some cried. Others cursed. The chief banged his staff against the ground. Amaka tried to run but was stopped by 2 elder women who held her arms. "You stole her child," someone shouted. "She nearly died that night," another cried. Amaka fell to her knees. Her pride crumbled before the village like dried clay under rain. "I just wanted to be loved," she sobbed. She always had Mama's favor, Papa's stories. Even in her pain, people pitied her more than me. I looked down at her, not with hate, but with the hollow ache of a wound reopened. "And so you took my child," I said. "My only child?" She looked up, face streaked with tears and dust. "I didn't think you'd survive. I told myself I was saving him. I lied to everyone, but mostly to myself. I held my son tightly, tears now warming my cheeks. The chief stood, clearing his throat. "Amaka," he said, voice grave, "you shall be exiled for 3 years. Let the forest teach you what family could not. As for Adana, she shall be restored, her name, her dignity, and the blessings due to her as a mother." Cheers rose. Some wept openly. Nwaka walked over and laid her hand on my head. "Your silence has birthed thunder," she whispered. "Your pain has not been in vain." I looked at the villagers, and for the first time in many moons, their eyes met mine not with pity, but with reverence. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply turned, took my son's hand, and walked home. The wind that day smelled different, lighter, as if the land itself had exhaled. And behind me, the drums began again, not for celebration, but for justice restored. In the days that followed the ritual in the village square, Ikenga moved with a new rhythm, quieter, heavier, as if the land itself was mourning its part in my silence. People came to me in waves, women with trembling hands who whispered their own buried stories. Old men who once looked through me now stopped and greeted me with full voice and bent knees. Children, curious and wide-eyed, followed me through the village paths, as if sensing something sacred in the way I carried my son. Chibuik, God is strength, for that was his true name, not the counterfeit identity Amaka once gave him. He began to grow brighter each day, his laugh fuller, as if even his small body understood he had come home. At night, he curled against me, his breath soft like cotton against my arm, and I would hum Mama's lullabies into the silence, tears slipping from my eyes not from pain, but from a healing too deep to explain. There were no more secrets between us, no more borrowed roles or stolen names. In the days that followed the ritual in the village square, Ikenga moved with a new rhythm, quieter, heavier, as if the land itself was mourning its part in my silence. People came to me in waves, women with trembling hands who whispered their own buried stories. Old men who once looked through me now stopped and greeted me with full voice and bent knees. Children, curious and wide-eyed, followed me through the village paths, as if sensing something sacred in the way I carried my son, Chibuiki. God is strength, for that was his true name, not the counterfeit identity Amaka once gave him. He began to grow brighter each day, his laugh fuller, as if even his small body understood he had come home. At night, he curled against me, his breath soft like cotton against my arm, and I would hum Mama's lullabies into the silence, tears slipping from my eyes not from pain, but from a healing too deep to explain. There were no more secrets between us, no more borrowed roles or stolen names. I no longer needed to tell him I was his mother. He knew. He knew it in the way he clung to my wrapper when strangers passed, in how he placed his tiny hand over my heart when I wept at Mama's grave, in how he mimicked my smile when I told him about the stars. The village, too, began to shift. Where once gossip had roamed freely like a stray goat, now there was a sacred hush, a carefulness around me, not out of fear, but reverence. Nwaka, the old healer, came every few days to cleanse the compound, to chant blessings at the corners of the home. "This place must forget sorrow," she said. "The walls must learn joy again." And so I began again. I rebuilt the herb garden Mama once tended, planting bitter leaf, pawpaw, lemongrass, and healing roots she taught me to use long ago. Women started coming to me for medicine, not just for the body, but for the soul. Wives abandoned by their husbands, young girls carrying shame in silence. Even elders who had once mocked me came and sat at my feet to be heard. I listened. I healed. I remembered. As for Amaka, she was gone, exiled to the edge of the northern forest, alone with her guilt and her own demons. I didn't visit. I didn't send food. But sometimes I sat near the river and wondered what she saw when she looked at her own reflection in the still water. Did she see the girl who once sang beside me under the moon? Or did she only see the woman who tried to become me and failed? I didn't know. I wasn't angry anymore. But forgiveness, I had learned, is not a fruit you pluck from another's hand. It is a seed you plant in your own heart and let grow slowly, if at all. My son began speaking in full sentences soon after. "Mama, look," he'd shout, holding a grasshopper or pointing at a rainbow over the hills. And each time he called me Mama, it stitched another thread back into my spirit. One morning, as the sun bathed the compound in golden light, he brought me a small broken comb from beneath the old mango tree. "For your hair," he said, and I wept, not because of the comb, but because someone, finally, had thought of me, thought I was worth giving to. In the quiet evenings, I would sit by the fire and write his name in the sand, then wipe it gently away, not to forget, but to remind myself that nothing is guaranteed except the love we nurture with our own hands. The chief visited once, bringing a bag of yam, cola nuts, and a goat. "The village owes you dignity," he said, "but dignity isn't given like a gift, it's earned like a scar." I nodded. I understood. What I had lost could never be returned, but what I had gained now burned brighter than anything stolen. Even the moon looked fuller these days, the winds less cruel, the night birds more generous in their songs. And though I had walked through a fire that nearly turned me to ash, I had emerged whole, changed, scarred, but whole. The rains came late that year, but when they did, they came like forgiveness. Soft, heavy, cleansing. I stood beneath the thatched edge of the veranda, holding Chibuiki close, watching the red dust melt into dark, rich earth. In the distance, thunder murmured like a tired old man, and somewhere beyond the hills, a flute played, a sound so gentle it made the trees sway in reverence. Life, I had learned, was not fair, but it was deeply rhythmic. And if you listen long enough, even the harshest chapters made a certain kind of music. I no longer tried to forget what Amaka did, nor did I let it define every breath I took. She would live her story, I would live mine, and my son, our son, would rise beyond both. He had begun asking questions, of course, like all children do. "Why did Auntie call me her son? Why did you cry the day I brought you that comb?" And I answered truthfully, but gently. Not because I wanted to shield him from pain, but because I wanted him to understand that strength does not grow in the absence of wounds. It grows because of them. He would grow up knowing who he was, who I was, who his ancestors were. He would walk with his head high not because he was better than anyone, but because his story had roots. And roots are what keep a tree standing when storms come. The women of the village often brought their daughters to sit near me now, asking me to tell them tales, not of princes or warriors, but of women who bled and lived, of mothers who lost and rose, of truth that slept under ashes until the wind woke it. I became a storyteller, not by ambition, but by survival. And in telling, I healed. In remembering, I restored. One evening, as the sun dipped low and bathed our compound in orange light, Chibuike climbed into my lap and looked at me with wide eyes. "Mama," he said, "are we safe now?" I pulled him close, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "Yes, my child. We are not only safe, we are whole." And in that moment, I understood something Mama used to say in passing, but I never truly felt until now. Healing is not loud. Justice is not a parade. And dignity, it does not shout. It does not rage. It does not beg to be seen, number. It simply lives in you, soft and unshakable, like the breath you take without thinking, like the sun that rises whether you watch it or not. I had walked through betrayal, been swallowed by silence, burned by blood, but I had not crumbled. I had not begged, and I had not turned to stone. I had risen, not as a scream, not as revenge, but as something steadier, brighter, and far more dangerous. Because now I knew dignity doesn't shout, it glows from within.